Do you think that is it possible that that story of me, of Tony or Oshu or Kelly, can repeat again?
Well, no, nothing repeats because this is the great mystery, but there's nothing happening anyway.
Yes.
So that's why, in a sense, everything is new. Everything is new. Everything is newness. It doesn't come out of anything, and there's no past and there's no future. There is only an apparent past and an apparent future. So there wouldn't be a repeat of anything in that sense. But it does seem that the experience of me or the self is that in some way or other the patterns of that life seem to be repeated with relationships and other things. In particular, if there's a particular problem with a mother or a father or whatever, or a lover, then it seems to repeat itself. It's not the same, but it seems to have the same pattern. But nothing is the same, so nothing is.
You say everything's, all there is this. Is there a difference with the teaching of the saying everything is the now or the present?
Yeah, because there is no now or present. For me, the idea of there being a now turns it into some sort of object, or a now and then another now and then another now. There is no now because it simply is. It's impossible to talk about this really because it's the mystery. This, what is, it's not measurable. And presence is another word that's used a lot these days. And it seems to objectify something, like there's the world and there's presence, like so there are two separate things. I mean, in the end, Jim and I were talking about it in the break, there aren't any words that can express this. Because all words, in a way, describe an object. Even this can be, even what is could be thought of as an object.
Because somehow the now gives again hope for the separate me. Like this weekend there is this guy who speaks about the now in Germany, and he fills thousands of people in Eckhart Tolle in Germany right now. So there are thousands of people in the way.
Huge.
Because there is this hope which is there, attracts much more people. Because there's something you can grasp.
Yeah, it seems as evidence, yeah. And he does surround all that with all sorts of processes, you know, living with your pain body and all that sort of stuff. So he's like there is a process involved in Eckhart Tolle's method. And he, you know, the very title of the book is already dualistic. He talks about the power of now. As though in some way or other now has some sort of power or ability to change things.
I understood you can be only in the so-called now if there's no me.
Well, yeah, you wouldn't be there. If there isn't anyone, there's just what is, and then again we're back to words again. What is not knowable. What is also what is not. In other words, the real and the unreal. But they aren't anything that can be experienced or known or be in. There isn't anything that can be in what is, but just is what is. I mean, the great mystery about what is that it's both real and unreal. It's nothing appearing to be what is. but they're both simultaneously the same thing. We're talking about the infinite again, really.
If children were brought up in different ways, wouldn't be...
No, we don't know.
Sorry?
You can't bring children up in a way that they won't be separate.
Yeah, I mean...
It just seems to happen.
Is it possible? No, it's impossible to do anything.
Yeah, it is impossible to do anything, and there's nothing to do. It isn't that there's something that needs doing that's impossible to do, it is that there's nothing to do. Because there is no one, and this is already complete. But tell that to self and it won't hear. The separate self won't hear. Can't hear this message. Because it believes that it lives in a world which needs to be made better, and it lives in its own experience of itself, which also needs to be made better. So it can't hear this message. To say to the self that everything is already complete is just nonsense. Because the self lives in an artificial reality which doesn't seem very good all the time.
Is it possible to happen or not to happen that a child who is born doesn't get a cell?
Exactly. I think it might be. I've never come across it, but yes, why not?
So you haven't heard
Anything,
about
there aren't any
anybody
rules. No, I haven't heard of
it
it.
might happen that...
Yeah, of course it can, because energy is free. It's free, it can be anything. It can be unbounded and it can be contracted and so on. So it's possible that a child could be born and never become separate. I mean, actually, really, that's what happens all the time. There is no such thing as a separate individual.
Since our talk is getting to an end, I would like to know more what is liberation.
Who would? Nobody can tell you. Nobody can tell you what liberation is. They can only describe what it isn't. And like liberation, the idea of liberation is to be free from the narrowness of being separate. It's being free from the illusion that you live in separation. That's all, but it can't be known or described. If it could be known or described, it could be taught, and you can't teach. There isn't any teaching about liberation.
It just happens.
Sorry?
It just happens. Or not.
Well, it doesn't happen because it already is. This is liberation. Within liberation, there's an idea that this isn't liberation.
That's a liberated person.
Sorry? No, there's no such thing as a liberated person.
There is just liberation.
There's
But
just
there
liberation.
are feelings.
Sorry?
There are feelings. Or
There's
there are
everything.
thoughts. Or
Well, there's everything, but not for anyone. There's everything. There is no longer a centre or an identity. All there is what seems to be happening. So obviously, everything happens in the whole. There's just a whole. There's no one in there. No one in there.
Yeah, a little discussion in the coffee about disappearing of the me, of the center. So maybe it's just chanting like in a hole. And I think some spiritual teachers are talking about it. That
There's nothing to drop in the hole. There's no hole.
nothing to do.
It's amazing how the self has to turn into something that happens to someone or something. Because the self thinks it's real, then it thinks it has to drop into a hole.
Advaita-vedanta Maharaj sometimes said earnestness is needed. Right?
Earnestness, yeah. He was quite, he talked about it.
Yeah. So, can you
No,
say
as far as I'm concerned, this Gadada was quite process orientated. I mean, if you read his book, there are all sorts of recommendations in it about how you can be and how you can't be. And he also talks about being in the I am. Well, as far as I'm concerned, all of that is some sort of teaching about the way you can be. To be earnest. Who's going to choose to be earnest? And who's going to choose to be in the I am? And what is the I am anyway? Who is the I that can be am? It's all another.
he says he followed his teacher's words.
Yeah, well, I'm sure that he probably might have done that, and his teacher recommended that he be in the I am, and he then thought or believed that he could be in the I am, and that was enlightenment. As far as I'm concerned, that's all part of the illusory truth. The problem with all of that sort of thing is that he's then made into an enlightened being or teacher. The world turns him into an enlightened teacher, like Ramana Maharshi or Nisargadatta or whatever. And then, as far as the world is concerned, everything he says is true. It's just another way of keeping the story going. The hope, the dreams.
Is it possible that he himself didn't see this?
No, as far as I'm concerned, no, because he wouldn't go on. You know, all the time there is someone, they will stay in the dream and believe that something has happened for them, and they sincerely would like to help other people in the same way. There's nothing right or wrong with it. It comes out of, usually, not always, but out of great sincerity. But it simply is another way of reinforcing a dream and the idea that there is a separate self that can take action to move down a path and become something else. As far as this is concerned, that's all part of the dream. I was watching the news this morning, and the Pope was speaking to the American da-da-da and about the world situation, and the people in the audience were apparently completely wrapped up and in awe of this amazing person in white talking to them, you know, as though somehow what was coming out of this figure in white was suddenly a new truth, which was just boring platitude. The whole thing. It was just nonsense. You know. You might as well have stood there and said, "I think the world should be more peaceful." It's just crap. But the thing is that as far as the world is concerned, he's a great spiritual figure. Therefore, he must have some wisdom that we can tap into, which will say it's just not, it's just a dream. So.
What should he have said?
Oh, no. Absolutely. I'll tell you what you should have said. Nothing. Only all I'm doing is describing the dream, how it goes on. Explaining yourself out.
Yes, at the Congress. Are you dreaming here? It's all a dream.
Just a dream. There's no more valid than somebody from ISIS, is it, or somebody standing up with a black flag and saying that, you know, all women should be slaves to men. It's all the same. It's all about the hope of the dreamer somewhere. Those particular people believe that the world would be better if women could be enslaved, for instance.
If we Take me
And in which situation the world will be better?
Sorry? No, there is no world to be better. The world that we think of as a world is simply no thing appearing to be a world, in which things seem to be happening. Within the dream, as far as the experience of the self is concerned, the world is a dualistic appearance, and it seems to arise as a battle between good and evil. And so the self tries to fight for one of those two things. And that's just another part of the dream.
So
there's no world to be saved.
So is there useless to read books?
Sorry?
Is there useless to read books of famous teachers?
But there isn't anyone that can help reading books or not reading books.
Also your book?
Or listening to the Pope.
Also your book?
People can't, no, absolutely. People can't help listening to the Pope or reading those books. It's what happens. It's not right or wrong, it's just what's happening.
No answers.
You mentioned yesterday about the glimpses.
Yeah.
And do you think that some kind of gradual dissolution of the dream or so is something?
There can be what seems to be a gradual dropping away of the sense of a self.
Yes.
But that could be that in that particular body, that there will be a diminished sense of the self that will be there until that body dies. Or it could be that diminished sense of self suddenly completely collapses and there's no one left at all. There is no, so what sort of thing. That's what seems to happen. It can be seen that the self diminishes in some people. We can see that happening. But that doesn't mean that liberation will happen, or it might do. There is the process in a way. When the self suddenly is no more, the illusion of there being separation is no more. It's seen that there never was a self that lived in that illusion.
It just looks like a process.
Yeah, well,
from
as far as the self is concerned, it's real.
Yeah.
But the other thing that also can happen is that people can come and hear this sort of message and reinforce a sense of self in defence against this. Because me doesn't like this message at all. So people come and hear this and then reinforce their sense of self. So both things happen, but only permanently.
Just trying to understand it is trying to control it.
Well, the problem for me is that it dreams that it's in control.
Yeah.
So what finds it about this message is that it would lose what it dreams to be its own control. It doesn't have any at all, because all there is what happens. But that's one of the great fears about this sort of message. It meant that it might lose something that it's never had.
Lose anything.
But of course, in another way, everything is lost, as far as me is concerned. Everything is lost when me collapses.
That's not funny.
It's a wonderful loss, of course.
There is somehow, it's difficult to explain in words for me, it's somehow resting a tremendous joy. And a tremendous joy, I can describe that, and is more nothing wherever, whenever important, nothing is really important, and it's equal what happens or not happen.
Yeah.
But what is resting is really this tremendous joy. Is this a trap? Because
it's
it's
a
also...
nice trap though, isn't it? But there's nothing you can do about it anyway. There isn't anybody trying to trap you because there's no agenda. This message comes without any agenda, it just is like it is.
Yeah.
There's no idea that anything will go anywhere or anybody will hear this message.
Yeah.
It's a recognition.
It's just that it's so, I don't know, it's so trifle, I can't describe it in any other words. So it's, is there a need that it's trifle?
It's about,
no, it's not, there's no need.
It's the joy of freedom.
It's just the joy by itself. Okay. Thanks.
So one person said once, apparently here are like 60 people, around 60 people sitting and watching, seeing one person, but that's just apparently.
Yeah, because all the time there's a sense of a person and you see everybody else as another person.
So what's happening is just one scene, like in form of 60, or what's happening?
Well, there's 60 different realities about this thing sitting here.
So
each one is unique.
Each one is unique, so they're different realities.
There are 7.2 billion realities. And no one person can know another person's reality.
We can't have the same thoughts.
Well, thoughts are, as far as I'm concerned, just information really, they're not very significant. Thoughts are already just information in a story, but the sense of what's happening or being experienced by the self can't be shared by anybody else. Nobody else knows what your spaghetti is like.
But when I say to her, think on this and that, or think on spaghetti.
Yeah, well, she gets her idea of what your spaghetti is like. It's not what your spaghetti is like.
So this is
we all live in our own, even the me lives in its own existence.
That the realities of different persons,
that's a separate
that they meet, or
sorry?
Do you think that the reality of different persons, that these realities meet, or is it just everybody is in his
It's a personal reality. It's the 7.2 personal realities,
and everyone is separated.
Separate, alone. You're all alone now.
So you don't think that is me? So
yeah, that is, well, that's the experience of, that's personal experience. There are 7.2 billion personal experiences of reality.
So if we take our group here, so 60 persons.
Yeah, 60 persons are living in their own personal reality.
But there are maybe some similarities because...
Oh, there can be. The walls look cream. Right. I'm obviously very good looking. That's accepted. But yeah, there are similarities, but they're still unique. For that, they're unique experiences. They don't have any meaning or value of any kind at all. But the other problem, the only thing that's similar to in all of them, but in a way that can't even be expressed, is that they all seem real. So there are 7.2 billion realities which to the individual self seem real only. So they're very narrow experiences.
But it's just personal experiences of the egos.
Well, the ego for me is a word that talks about separate individuality or separate energy is what I think is the most accurate way of describing it. For me, the ego is more addressing of the personality, like a child grows up and has to live in the world, so it presents itself in a certain way that it thinks will work after a bit of experimentation. This is what I'm like, do you love me? Which is really what's going on. And then it also dresses that up, right? And then for me that's the ego, it makes what it presents more acceptable. I mean, this is a bit of a simplification, but yeah. So that's the game it plays. So it presents itself, it presents a persona. A persona, the word persona means mask, you know, presents itself in this way. Plays the game. And for me, the ego is more about dressing up the persona and making it more important.
And what is the if you collect all these 7 billion of different realities, what is that?
It's a mess. If you look at the world we live in, it's not working very well. So you get all sorts of battles going on, all sorts of different interests. Yeah, yeah, it's an appearance of all those different factions and interests battling together.
But you would not collect it together to say that's some kind of world consciousness or something.
You could if you wanted to, I wouldn't, no. It's just energy playing it. It's just, I mean, it's energy appearing as that. But energy is brilliant, it's a magician, it can appear as anything. So it's just, and it's all completely and utterly meaningless. And it's not even really happening, it only appears to be happening. It has no significance of any kind at all, except for the person. The person thinks that their ideas and who they are very, very important. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, when I was Tony Parsons, I was the most important person in the world. It's like that. It's got to be like that for survival or family. Amazing. Yeah, amazing. The world wags on. And of course, what's interesting is that in relationships, people want to be together. They want to belong. And the strange thing is that however intimate two people are, they can never be one. Because they're actually in their own realities, so they can't know the other person. And what they long for is to be one, which is what we're talking about. And the only way that oneness can arise is when they're not there. It's incredible. And that what keeps that, maintains that separation is awareness. But that contracted sense for me arises, what arises with it is awareness. So there's a boundlessness in the tiny, tiny child in the first year or year. And then suddenly, and the mother's been walking in every day, but it's just boundlessness, being as a mother or as a thing that walks in. And then one day, there's an awareness of the mother walking in. And directly there's an awareness of another, there's an awareness of me. It's a colossal shift which the mind completely eradicates as best as it can. There's hardly anybody that can remember that moment, that amazing moment when suddenly there's a sense of there being someone in here that's separate from the mother and the whole.
So we actually can say that there is not a world existing, there are just all these impressions of the
it's all impressionism, yeah, it's all.
But isn't this awareness what you're looking for?
Well, the awareness that people teach people about in self-inquiry or whatever is simply a function that keeps people separate. So the whole world is maintained in separation. This has been recently discovered also by neuroscientists. Awareness is the instrument that keeps people in the self-identity world. Awareness is a function which can only function if it has an object that it can be aware of. So that's immediately separation. I am aware. We're all sitting on seats, in this room. So the me, or the self, is aware of sitting on a seat. People in this room, let's be simple about it, people in this room are aware of sitting on a seat. That's how they keep separate from what is. In simple terms, what is the aliveness of a bum on a seat. But what then turns it into something separate is the awareness of the artificial centre in here, which thinks it knows it's sitting on a seat.
Yes, but isn't there awareness above this?
Sorry?
Isn't there awareness above without the me?
No, not at all. Awareness is a function, it's a dualistic function. It has to have something that it can be aware of. When that whole thing collapses, there's no awareness. There's nothing that's aware of anything. If it was, it would be separate from it. There isn't anything else in the whole of this apparent existence apart from the human being which is aware. Dogs aren't aware, cats aren't aware. They respond and react to things, but they're just animals doing that. But there's no sense of an awareness of anything because there's no sense of a separate identity. So the human being walks around and talks about having a special privilege to access to the ultimate truth because it believes it can be aware. So it thinks it somehow has dominion over everything else because it's aware. Actually, it's the other way around. The individual remains separate and in longing for something through awareness. Everything else is simply being. Everything else is at one. So the only illusion there is the illusion of separation through awareness. And the whole teaching of self-inquiry is, apart from asking who am I, is focusing awareness more and more. You go to a self, he will teach you to, or she will teach you to focus your awareness. And what happens if you go on trying, or apparently choosing to, whoever does that, I don't know, but if you go on apparently focusing your awareness, what you reach is a state of detachment. And that it's only a state, so it's very transient. The state of attachment makes you feel, I've experienced this because I did all that, it makes you feel as though you're somehow sitting in an ivory tower and knowing everything and you're aware of everything. It's like a godlike. It doesn't last long, but not all. Because it's exactly the opposite of what we're talking about here. It's extreme separation, so you live in this world and somehow you're separate from everything and you see everything happening like a god for about 3 weeks.
Didn't you say, Tony, that scientists found out a way that something in the brain you can cut and then you can...
I don't know, maybe one day they will.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Okay.
So about detachment, I'm practicing when I have a bad feeling, an anger or whatever, then I say, anger just happens, but nobody is angry. What about this?
It's just a belief system.
Can I say that open heart experience are whole continuation of me?
And the open heart experience is just another process of reaching a state of being open-hearted. It's just another story. Well, they all are. You know, in the world, in the limited world of me, there are all sorts of ways of making me feel better, which sometimes are quite effective for a little while, but only for a little while. Because essentially they don't deal with the root of all of it, and that is separation. The root of all of the turmoil of being a person or a separate self is separation from the whole. We long for home. We can't find it. We constantly look for home, we can't find it. And it hides from that looking by already being everything. This is home. This is home. What's happening is that we learn. You know, the me lives in what will be, it can't know what is. What is can't be known, it just is. And so we find every sort of process we can to try and satisfy ourselves, and we never can satisfy ourselves. Thank you.